Chapter 4. In the morning, a whistle shrieked. It was still dark. Up, 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 shouted the barrack supervisor, a flagerin, or nurse, who took care of us. She wore a white coat. Get ready, she screeched. Miriam and I did not know the routine yet. Holding hands, we watched the older girls helping little ones prepare for roll call. Outside, we lined up in rows of 5 to be counted. Roll call took half an hour to an hour. Looking back, I do not remember a single child sitting down or crying, not even the 2-year-olds. I think we understood instinctively that our lives depended on cooperation. After roll call, we went inside to straighten up the barracks. The 3 dead children Miriam and I had seen at the latrine the night before were no longer on the floor. We learned that when a child died, the other children in the same bunk could not stand lying next to a dead body, so they removed the corpse to the latrine and kept her clothing for themselves. As for the 3 dead bodies Miriam and I had seen, adults had put them back into their bunks to be counted. Every day, every child had to be counted, dead or alive. Dr. Mengele knew how many twins he had, and no corpse could be disposed of without following procedure. That first morning, an SS guard waited at the front of the barracks. Dr. Mengele is coming, she yelled. The supervisors seemed nervous, twitchy with anticipation of the great man. Miriam and I stood at attention, not daring to move or breathe. Dr. Joseph Mengele entered the barracks. He was dressed elegantly in an SS uniform and tall, shiny black riding boots. He wore white gloves and carried a baton. My first thought was how handsome he was, like a movie star. He strode through the barracks, counting twins at every bunk, with an entourage of 8 people accompanying him. We later found out that the group included a Dr. Koenig, a girl who was the interpreter, and several SS guards and assistants. Mengele was never escorted by fewer than 8 in his entourage at these barracks checks. When Dr. Mengele stopped at the bunks containing the 3 dead bodies, he flew into a rage. Why did you let these children die? He screamed at the nurse and SS guards. I cannot afford to lose even one child. Our nurse and the supervisors trembled. He continued counting until he came to Miriam and me. He stopped and looked at us. I was petrified. Then he moved on. The other children told us that he had been on the selection platform the day before when we had arrived. He was the one who made the selections of the prisoners with a flick of his baton. To the right meant the gas chamber, to the left the camp and forced labor. After Mengele left the barracks, we received our morning food rations. Miriam and I drank the fake coffee, although it tasted awful. Most importantly, it was made from boiled water, and we soon learned that meant it was safe and would not give us dysentery, endless diarrhea. In groups of 5, we marched from Birkenau to the labs in Auschwitz. We entered a big 2-story brick building. Miriam and I were forced to take off our dresses, underwear, and shoes. There were boys as well as girls, 20 or 30 sets of twins. In the beginning, I was shocked at the sight. I found out later that boy twins stayed in a separate barracks under better conditions than ours. They were cared for by a young Jewish prisoner, formerly an officer, named Zvi Spiegel, whom Mengele had chosen to supervise them. Zvi intervened to help the little boy twins, convincing Mengele to give them better food and to improve their living conditions. Mengele must have figured all this would make them better guinea pigs. So Zvi, also known as the twins' papa, comforted the boys, gave them games to keep their minds active, and taught them bits of geography and math. During the day, he would let them kick around a soccer ball made of a bundle of rags to keep them in better physical condition. He also had them memorize each other's names to make them feel human. We had no such person in our barracks to lead us and help us form friendships. I never went up to another girl and asked her name or told her mine. We were all alone, just twins with numbers, each of us trying to survive. The only person I had to think about was Miriam. In that brick building, as I looked around, I noticed some fraternal twins, but most were identical like Miriam and me. Later, I learned that Dr. Mengele wanted to discover the secret of twinning. One goal of his experiments was to learn how to create blonde-haired, blue-eyed babies in multiple numbers to increase the German population. Hitler called Aryans, the blonde and blue-eyed, white-skinned Germans, the master race, and we were his human guinea pigs. To study other natural abnormalities and to try to figure out how to prevent genetic mutation, Mengele's research included giants, dwarfs, the handicapped, and gypsies. The dwarfs lived in barracks near ours, and we sometimes saw them walking through camp. All of us sat completely naked on benches. Boys were there too. It was very cold. We had no place to hide. It was embarrassing to be there without any clothes. Some girls crossed their legs and covered up with their hands. Others shook with fear while SS guards pointed at us and laughed. The nudity was one of the most dehumanizing things in the camp for me. Dr. Mengele popped in and out to supervise. Other doctors and nurses in white coats who were inmates or prisoners like us observed us and took notes. First, they measured my head with an instrument called a caliper, made of two pieces of metal, which they pressed against my skull and squeezed. The doctor called out the numbers to an assistant who wrote notes into a file. They measured our earlobes, the bridges of our noses, the size of our lips, the width, shape, and color of our eyes. They compared the shade of blue of Miriam's eyes to the blue of my eyes with a chart of eye colors. Over and over they measured. They spent 3 to 4 hours on one ear. Each time the doctor measured me, they measured Miriam to see how we were alike and how we were different. A photographer snapped pictures, an artist drew sketches, technicians took x rays, 5 or 6 at a time. Next, they asked us questions and gave commands. An inmate who spoke Hungarian and German acted as translator. If I did something, Miriam did the same. Every time I follow you, Miriam whispered, they write something down. They want to see which of us is the leader. Of course, it was me, just as it had always been. After observing the previous day in the processing center when I had resisted tattooing, they also knew I was a troublemaker. We sat there for 6 to 8 hours. I hated every second. Finally, we were allowed to get dressed and were marched back to our barracks for the evening meal, a meager portion of very dark bread, about 2 and 1/2 inches long. In the afternoon, our supervising nurse made us learn a song in German. It went, I am a little German child. If not, phooey. She put us in a circle and made one girl stand in the center. We had to walk around that girl and sing, phooey, phooey, phooey. Dirty, filthy Jews, the nurse shouted at us. Swine. She loved that song. It meant we children were disgusting. We hated that nurse. We called her Snake behind her back. She had thick legs and long black hair that she wore in a braid. Snake kept taunting us. Who do you think you are? She asked. We did not answer. She did not expect an answer either. You think you are so smart because you are still alive? Asked Snake. You're going to be dead before long. We're going to kill all of you. For the first day or two, Miriam and I cried and cried, but we soon realized that crying would not help anything. We mostly felt numb. Staying alive was the most important thing. We knew we were alive because of the experiments, because of a fortunate accident of nature, because we were Mengele's twins.